Hello, I'm Katrina Stewart. I am founder of SWAN, Scottish Women's Autism Network, which I founded in 2012, and it became a charity in 2016. I'm currently seconded from Scottish Autism to work as the organisational development lead to work strategically as well as practically to put SWAN on a more sustainable footing. So one of the things that I've done over the last year was that when the Scottish Government announced they were releasing some funds as part of their Improving Understanding of Autism campaign, I put in a proposal to that fund and was very, very lucky to be successful in gaining one of the funds. We know the statistics around autistic people in employment are not good. We don't really know exactly how accurate those statistics are. In other words, the figures that we have about autistic people in employment, which suggests that maybe only something like 15% of all autistic people are actually in employment, don't necessarily take into account all those people who are just getting on with their lives, who have not, for whatever reason, access to a diagnosis, or if they have perhaps not disclosed it widely. And that includes a lot of women. I became very well aware that there were quite a lot of women in our networks who were in employment, but actually often struggling to stay in employment, or they were struggling with their mental health, or they were being bullied, or all sorts of things were going on. So my proposal to the fund was that we invite women to contact us who would like our support. And so we would do that in two ways. We would offer to support their employers if it was appropriate, to help the employers build a more inclusive environment for their employees, to enable that employee to continue working for them happily, healthily, and actually to give their best that they could to that job. And we would also support the women through our peer support networks. So things happen, and so this kind of little virus thing happened this year. So at the point where we were looking to recruit and start the project, the world seemed to get turned upside down in many ways. So each of us who are funded, each of the charities that are funded within this have a performance advisor at Inspiring Scotland. And I'm just going to say now, the guys at Inspiring Scotland are just fantastic, and they've worked so hard with all the charities. And they've given such individual support to people like me. So we worked very hard to have a look at how we could remodel what we were going to deliver in this context of lockdown and the ongoing situation with COVID-19. So we have been working with women, and we have been working with employers. But what we're also doing is this is the new thing. We haven't done this before. This is breaking new ground. And so one of our tasks is to ensure that we keep a really good record of all this, so that we record not just the numbers or the problems or the issues or what the different cases are, which we are doing. But what we also want to do is have a look at where are the surprises, as Fiona from our board asked. What are we finding out that we didn't expect to find out? What are the barriers to autistic women staying in employment? What are the barriers to raising those levels of awareness and understanding within the workplace? Are there barriers? What are the facilitators? We're drawing up, we're going to build a database of information, people that we're in touch with. We'd like to gather examples of good practice, because one of the things about good practice doing that is that we then have examples we can offer to other people. And under employment law, under the Equalities Act, actually, employers are obliged to make reasonable adjustments for people who have any kind of disability or are disabled, and that includes autistic people. The controversy over the wording of that is, of course, who defines what is a reasonable adjustment? But one of the things we've had conversations around is it's quite hard to come up with a handbook, because actually what one autistic person needs in one particular employment context is not necessarily going to be the same thing that another autistic person needs in a different employment context. However, having said that, we know people who we know that it's useful for people to have some sense of what these things might look like. I think that's probably a good place to mention that we have regular meetings with the other funded charities as part of the Improving Understanding of Autism Fund, which is great because we're all supporting each other and passing on information. And so for example, Swan and AAA's in Aberdeen are doing a lot of partnership work and supporting each other. So the other thing we're doing is, Lynn, as she's talking to the women, I mean, we offer peer support anyway. We offer peer support through our local groups, which are all currently running online, and we're just about to start another one in Inverness Highlands. We have our own online forum, private forum, peer support forum. We're hoping to start up another one via the website for young swans, i.e. teenagers, 14 to 18 age group. But so all those things are there. But what Lynn's brought to this project is something completely different, which is she's brought a wealth of HR experience and working in businesses and organizations, working with employees. So she's really exploring what other kinds of support do the autistic women need. And she's pulling out themes, and those themes are kind of two-sided, if you like, or fit two columns. So some of the themes are around the employers, or the employment context. So, for example, bullying is quite a common issue. Poor communication between the staff member and line management might be another. And then on the other side is, what are the common themes that are part of parcel of being an autistic woman? So one of the things she's identified, which I'm sure a lot of us would be able to relate to, those of us who are autistic women or raised autistic girls or whatever, is perfectionism. We're really hard on ourselves. We're quite hard on other people. Because we're kind of like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be done, therefore we need to do it to the best of our abilities, and that can be a fantastic asset to have in a workplace where you've got someone who's very conscientious and very focused. The downside is that that autistic person might not be very good at managing that perfectionism and the impact that's going to have on their own sense of self and their confidence and their mental health. So we're identifying areas where some of the women could do with particular kinds of support and help and mentoring and coaching. So I need to differentiate these things because they're all very different. Coaching and mentoring are different things, and what we call mentoring, as in peer mentoring and peer support, is very different from professional mentoring, for example. And so it's quite important that we do actually make sure that we know what we're talking about, because a lot of autistic people, like other people actually, when it's suggested to them they need coaching or mentoring, there's an assumption that this is about training an autistic person to be less autistic and therefore more able to fit into the non-autistically inclusive environment. But in fact, it's not about that. It's about self-identity. It's about learning who you actually are and what your strengths and weaknesses are and how to look after yourself, which is hugely important, particularly for autistic girls who are women who've probably spent most of their formative years desperately trying to fit in and please everyone else when they're not getting into trouble by being difficult. So finding ways of supporting autistic women having that sense of identity and self-awareness and self-care and self-confidence to even think about, well, what is my professional career going to be? I think one of the other things we have to understand as well is what we mean by outcomes for a project like this, because an outcome might be to raise awareness and inclusivity in a workplace, working environment, and to support autistic women staying in their jobs. It might not be that. A good outcome for an individual might be about giving her support and confidence to actually think about whether she needs to move elsewhere to work, or whether she maybe even wants to set up a business herself. There's a whole area there about self-employed, entrepreneurial, autistic people, but that's a different topic for another time. So we're really looking at how we can pull out all these themes, evidence what we're doing. We've just commissioned an external evaluator as well as doing our own internal monitoring and evaluation. And because we're thinking now that actually in some ways, what we've learned over the last few months through this crisis is actually an opportunity for us to think more expansively, and how, after this project is finished, how can we actually continue doing this work, and how can we maybe even scale up what we're doing, because we could do things online that we wouldn't have thought of doing before. Before I finish, one of the things I really want to talk about is how does this relate to the theme of human rights? And if we're looking at, there's two ways of looking at this. Well, actually, there's lots of ways of looking at this. In terms of human rights, the right to access work is a kind of, it's something that is a given, really. It's, people universally accept that that's what people should have. It's not something that everyone is able to help healthily and happily, and some people are absolutely, have insurmountable barriers to access that. Autistic people who are deemed to be able, people like myself, for example, a full-time job is actually, I'm trying to think of the right term for it. It's about, it's a trade-off quite often. So full-time employment of the kind that, many people think of as going to work, you commute to an office, you're part of a team. I know that's not what work is to everyone, but let's take that as an example. For me, that's something I've actually avoided my whole life in many ways, partly because I realized when I was quite young that there was something about that kind of environment just caused me enormous amounts of exhaustion and stress, and I didn't understand why it seemed so difficult for me when I know I'm really, really able and I've got a good brain in my head and all these kinds of things. Of course, I understand better now. But if you want the things that go with full-time job, you want the financial rewards, you want to feel that you're contributing to society, whatever it is that the motivation is, or even necessity. Obviously, lots of people have no choice, including myself, at the moment. It's a trade-off, because actually the consequences are exhaustion and stress and anxiety often, which means that you don't have the energy to do the other things you want to do, see family, see friends, whatever. So, that's something that we need to really understand better about what we're asking autistic people to do, if we're expecting them to join the workforce in the same way that other people do now. COVID has shown that it's actually not impossible for people to work from home. And in fact, for many of us, I think I've probably been working harder, and I was working pretty hard anyway before COVID, but I've certainly been working extremely hard over the last few months, because you can fit in so many more meetings. And I've had to start being a lot stricter about not jam-packing the day too full. But there's another thing about human rights. People worry that, if you talk about autism and rights, that what you're doing is you're asking for special favours. Well, we're not. What we want is to be able to access things that other people take, generally, a lot of other people take for granted. So access to education safely, access to employment, if that's what we're doing, safely and healthily, and And that also means freedoms from bullying, freedoms from being targeted or victimized. Mental health is a huge thing for everyone under the current circumstances. I think what's come out of COVID is that we're learning about some of the ways in which some parts of our population are marginalised or discriminated against in even really subtle ways that we hadn't recognised before, or had been recognised but hadn't been widely discussed. And I think one of the things that's come out of the situation is we are now discussing a lot of these things, which is positive. It's really positive. But mental health overlap with issues around employment are actually huge for autistic people. So many autistic people went into COVID without particularly robust mental health anyway. And I think one of the tasks for us as we go forward is to use what we're learning in the course of running these projects and doing what we're doing to really underpin a much more positive and a much more supportive and really much more impactful way, going forwards, that we have a narrative that actually supports and includes autistic people and doesn't continue to make us feel excluded or that we're not really understood. I hope all that makes sense. I mean, there are so many things go into what makes a good workplace. And the training that we're now offering through this project, I'm really excited about, because Lynn has really taken the traditional, introduction to autism training and turned it around, so it's seems much more accessible and interactive and user friendly. It's like we're training people to really think about what they're learning about autism and what does that mean in terms of their own experience in the workplace as either employers or as colleagues. So one of the things that's been really interesting, we found out in terms of the training, having delivered one set of training to a large organisation, or a team within a large organisation, we were then contacted by Remploy, who support people with mental health issues in the working environment. And so we're going to, by the time this conference takes place, we will have delivered training there as well. So we're very excited about how the kind of ripples in the pond effect that this work is having. And we've also been talking to one of the unions about possibly training their staff, because the more people we can reach, the more this kind of momentum gathers, and obviously the more impact we can have. So that's really exciting. So in some ways it's about changing the culture, not just the environment, but the culture, the attitudes. If we get this right, if we are able to improve levels of understanding of autism to a critical level, we are going to do so much good for so many people, and the whole of Scottish society will benefit from this. I do believe that quite passionately. Autistic people. Now, there was a young man last night who won the Wainwright Book Award. What did he say? He said, if autistic young people are given the right support, miraculous things can happen. Brilliant. And actually I would say the same thing across the lifespan. If the environment is an inclusive one for autistic people and supportive, then miraculous things can happen. Autistic people will be able to be fully functioning citizens, contributing the best that they have to offer, which is often it's often gold, really. And will require less services and support, and the economy will gain, and we all benefit. I think I'll stop this now. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to present on the work we're doing. I'll just remind you that we've still got quite a few months till the end of March. We're running this project, so and I'm so excited about the team now that we've got with Lynn Reid and Lindsay McAdam. And so do get in touch if you want to know anything else about it, or you actually even want to access the project that we're running. So thank you very much indeed.